Good morning and welcome back to 78 Reflections. This morning, I'm back for another week ahead spread. If you don't know, I have been working through this 111-day project, and for this last leg of the race, my tarot work is gamifying my life. And so I draw a card asking, what do I need to know for the week ahead? And then I am recording these videos with my first impression of these cards, looking at the imagery, potentially consulting the guidebook if I'm not familiar with it, but really just looking at the images on the cards and thinking about what this could mean for me in that category of my life for the week ahead. So there's 8 categories you can see on my little high-tech spread. And then the archetype card, which in this image is shown in the center, but in what you'll see, it's on the side just because of logistics for filming. But with that being said, we're just going to jump right in and walk through the cards. I've selected a different deck for each of these 8 focus areas in my life, and drawing a card from that deck. And I will list all the decks in the description box. So starting with prosperity. I have been on the struggle bus in this section. So prosperity for me is mindful spending, snowball payments, budget by paycheck workbook, and money Mondays. I'm very resistant to this. I prefer the ostrich approach. Last week I had the 3 of Swords, no surprise. And today I have the 10 of Wands. And this is the So Below deck in the Book of Shadows. And you know, the 10 of Wands I'm extremely familiar with. It's a card that I get all of the time. And for me, the 10 of Wands is about, first of all, sometimes it's just about pushing through and doing the thing that you need to do, which is probably what I need to do when it comes to prosperity. But the 10 of Wands can also mean like asking yourself, like, do I really need to carry all of this right now? And so I always like to consider with the 10 of Wands, am I making this harder than I need to? And what do I really need to do to go forward? But often the 10 of Wands can be, and I think in this case, it's about letting my responsibilities regarding prosperity slip through the cracks. So I think that's a relevant card for me today. So above that is Refuge. So Refuge for me is spirituality. And this week, I made really good progress on this. I'm working with the Season of the Witch oracle cards to kind of guide me through the Witch's Sabbats, which has really been fun and interesting. And also, it's a new moon today, so I'm going to do a new moon, something for the new moon tonight. And so the 8 of Fire for this card. Now, this does not read like the Waite-Smith. So I am going to consult the book. And the 8 of Fire, which is interesting because it looks like water on this card at first glance, but it's a fire card and it's representing the planet of Neptune. And the guidebook says, Neptune stands calmly in the middle of it all, confident, somehow in control, and rather enjoying the ride. And it also talks about that the 8 of Fire lulls us into daydreams and fantasies, and logic takes a back seat as our soul craves mystery and illusion. And in this card, it's also mist, not water, as I first thought. And the guidebook talks about beguiling mists cover the mundane and inspire the mind to dream. In this altered state, Neptune's charms, the mind relaxes, logic blurs, and synapses make new connection, allowing a well-being of psychic tendencies and letting flow the feelings of compassion, sensitivity, and tolerance. So I am really embracing that for the week ahead, and I think it aligns perfectly with that category of my life, which is spirituality. So moving down here towards vitality, that is health and wellness for me, and solitude. Solitude is definitely cornerstone to my health and wellness. I need a lot of solitude. Solitude is something that refuels me. It energizes me. And so I'm not surprised to see that card here. I have had my daughter staying with me for the last 3 weeks, which has been wonderful, and I have really enjoyed it. A lot of connection. It's really been great for the adventure part of my life. But I'm also going away in the weekend ahead, and so I think this card is a good reminder that I'm going to need to spend some time in solitude this week to re-energize and be ready for some peopling next weekend. And so I'm just going to glance at the guidebook. It says, spend time alone. In your life, this means to take your own counsel rather than relying on the opinions and dictates of others. Be on your own. And so I think that is, in solitude, you will thrive. This card also suggests a safe haven, a sacred womb for incubation and self-transformation. So I'm embracing that this week, moving into the weekend. So above that is insights. And for me, insights is learning and personal growth. It's about learning about the tarot. It's also the learning part of my Decan Stroll, whereas you'll see the YouTube part of my Decan Stroll is in pursuits. And the Ace of Waters. So Waters is cups. This is the witch sister. And the Ace card is the seed, the beginning. And cups has to do with our emotions. And so looking at the guidebook for the Ace of Waters, it brings peace and calm before transformation. There is a well of healing power that we can draw from and a source of selfless love that can replenish our hearts. So it's also about replenishing our hearts. So from the concept of learning and personal growth, especially seeing this frog just kind of sitting, not jumping into the water, but just kind of sitting there. I'm really thinking about, sitting in stillness. And I'm reminded of the Brent in her tarot interpretation. She talks about the tarot being a series of action steps and integration. And integration sometimes in just action-oriented people, or even in today's society of, achievements, that we don't value the integration, but the integration is as important as the action. And so I'm thinking of this as being a really integration step this week regarding my learning and personal growth. Next, we're going to go down here to stewardship. So stewardship for me is care of property and assets, and the Knight of Wands. So the Knight of Wands for me is about taking action. The Knight is an action card. Wands is passion. But because this is in the category of stewardship, I'm going to interpret it in the context of where I've drawn it. So the question I asked was, what do I need to know for the week ahead? And so with the Knight of Wands card, I'm really thinking it's just take action, do the things you need to do. I need to get ready for my trip. And so that's going to be important. And there's always important stewardship things that need to be done when you're getting ready to go away. So I think that is about taking action. And look at her go. She's having some fun too. So I think take action, have some fun too. Which takes us to pursuits. So pursuits is passion projects. And for me, a lot of that is my YouTube channel. And the Queen of Swords. What a beautiful card. I love the Queen of Swords. I really like to connect to that energy. I am very much a cerebral person. And so I spend a lot of time in my head. And the Queen of Swords, I always think of the Queen of Swords as being like a surgeon, of cutting away what's unnecessary and getting kind of to the heart of the matter. And this, looking at this image, looking at this owl, that's sitting in this landscape of snow, and look at the beautiful sky and the clouds. I just think of her, having this great view and sharpening her vision. And so, especially on the topic of pursuits, it's about narrowing into what's most important. And I feel like I've been doing some of that work already this morning. And so I think that's a great message that I can work with for this week. Now down to impact. So impact for me is my career and influence. It's work projects and career progression. And the Five of Wands. So the Five of Wands is one of my least favorite cards. So the Tower and the Five of Wands are my least favorite card. And the Five of Wands is my least favorite card because it's about external conflict. But my daughter reminded me this morning that it doesn't have to be external conflict. So she had the Five of Wands coming up for her this week in her spreads as well. And now here we see it showing up with my work, which is probably where I would least like to have conflict. But I think there is a bit of internal conflict for me regarding my work and what matters most and how do I get all the things done. And so this is the birds fighting, which is interesting because I had birds flying towards the window this morning when I was having my coffee. And so I had a lot of bird energy in my life today. And the guidebook for this, I'm just flipping to it as I'm talking. It says that this card can encourage you to rise to the challenge and prove yourself worthy of the prize. It can drive and motivate you to push through. And as this card is part of the suit of wands, disagreements it signifies are typically external as opposed to internal. That might be indicated by the suit of cups. Regardless, the specific form of conflict and it represents, know that it will stir you in some way. So can't wait to check in on that later this week. And so last but not least is adventures, and that is friends, family, and fun. Double Five of Wands. So that's interesting. The Five of Wands coming up in my adventures. And I'm just thinking ahead I have a trip planned for next weekend, and I was feeling some conflict over it this morning because I was thinking about, I'm spending a lot of money and, prosperity is a thing. And, do I really want to go? Do I really have time? I'm busy with work right now. So the interesting thing about this card is you see these witches gathered around the cauldron and they look like they're having a disagreement. But also if you look at the cats, they look like they're not having a good time either. So I think this does represent kind of my state of mind and where I'm at right now. And I'm reminded of, I do not have that guidebook by me because I do find these cards very intuitive. So I often don't need the guidebook, although I would be interested to see what it says. And I will dig deeper into these cards this week. But what I'm just thinking of is how the Brinth talks about with the Five of Wands is that it's about determining whether or not conflict is worthwhile. And I think that can be something to consider. But I think I'm just going to go grab the guidebook real quick because I'm feeling compelled to look at it a little more closely. So getting the guidebook for this hasn't been that helpful because it's really just talking about what I already know about the Five of Wands. That can also be about conflict. In this guidebook, it talks about how these witches could be extremely powerful if they could cooperate. But if each one thinks they know best and they don't, sort of lean into a cooperative mindset, that they're not going to accomplish anything. And so you can see there's a fire starting on the ground. They're not even noticing. I'm going to have to sit with that energy this week and just kind of consider how that's coming into play for me with this trip coming up, spending some time with family, and just considering how to navigate, how I'm feeling about where I'm at right now, what I have going on in my life, and also really making space for this category of my life, which is really important, which is spending time with family and friends and having, and maybe this is a reminder to me that having peaceful relationships with people is really important to me. So that's interesting. So my process for this is I draw these cards for the week ahead. And then during the week, as I feel I earn the card, I draw a card of reflection. And I reflect back on the original card. I dig a little deeper into it. And then the reflection card is just kind of giving me a bit of a pulse on where I'm at now. And this past week, that process has been very, very powerful. And I've got some feedback that really made me think about things from a different vantage point, and I think is really helping me work towards my goals in a meaningful way. So let's look at the archetype, which is kind of the overarching message for the week, and it is the cave. Well, the cave seems to be in line with solitude. It's also, I think the cave is about going inward. And it's kind of interesting, the imagery with the eyes and the light in the distance and the hands there. It's really making me think about leaning into self and maybe going a bit deeper. When I think of a cave, I don't have that guidebook here either, do I? When I think of a cave, I think about, introspection, kind of darkness, solitude, and introspection. It almost reminds me of a high priestess type energy of going internal. Well, this has been an interesting spread for me. And I think just kind of looking over, last week, my challenges were here, and I think they remain there based on these cards. And also, I think there's a real encouragement with this card to think about, what matters most. And, all of these areas I've chosen because they're important to me, and I'm longing for more balance in my life. I tend to spend most of my energy here and here. And my reason for doing this was because all of these things are important to me. And I realize it's not going to balance out every day or even every week. But I'm hoping over the fullness of time, this is going to be an encouragement to find more balance in all of these areas. So thank you for joining me today for this week ahead spread. And I hope that I will see you next weekend. I will be away next weekend, so it's possible I might not post the video until Monday, but maybe I'll post the video from where I'm at, and you'll be able to hear my week ahead spread from a different location. We'll see. Thank you for joining me. Please like the video if you do. Subscribe if you're interested in hearing more from me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then.